The title of this exhibition is In the Shadow of Contemplation. And this show is a compilation of work that ranges over a period of time from 1999 to the present that connects and links much of the themes in my work about self-reflection and contemplation and its importance. This painting titled Shadow of Contemplation was created in 2006 after a trip to Japan. Blessings of Ananda, and it is again a part of the Blind Spot series that is inspired by my trip to Japan. This was executed in 2006. This also embodies the title, or includes the title of my daughter's name, Ananda, which means rapture and bliss. But again, it connects to this notion of contemplative reflection, everyday experiences that we have in the temporal world and how they connect to our more philosophical and emotional and spiritual self, and the meaning of those experiences, and understanding our role and relationship to those experiences so that we have a deeper sense of our connection and a deeper sense of our role that we play in that community of actions and that community of reality. Whispers in the Blood was created in 1995, just a year after having done studies in West Africa as part of a Fulbright research group. What struck me about that study to Africa and also later in the West Indies was this whole notion of African retention in both the aesthetic practices of African Americans and perhaps even at a deeper level, a more physical level, a more biological level. So the Whispers in the Blood suggests that there were echoes, there were noises that had an African origin, whether it was through religious practices, Yoruba and Buddhism, or through aesthetic practices from the work of the African American slave on a plantation, bottom trees, slave jugs, and musical instruments, whether this retention continued. And this work documents that retention. At the center of it, you see a portrayal of Ashanti Ahene, which is the king chief in Africa of the Ashanti people, who is a divine-like figure. To the right, you see a small portrait of my daughter, Ananda. And at the lower level, you see a mixed media element, which is a woodblock print or relief print of my portrait profile onto some stakes at the lower half. This idea of sacrifice, not only sacrifice philosophically, but a sacrifice in a spiritual sense, that one has to surrender a notion of reality to embrace another. And Africa was very much about expanding my notion of reality, and that there was a world and worlds that lived differently, thought differently, and had a different set of ethics and moral practices, which challenged the ones that I was raised in, the ones that I had inherited from parents and from my culture. Montague's Moment. And it's inspired by an idea of a young African-American male and his dog and this relationship between them. And you look closely, you see the dog's eyes are in the figure of Montague, the standing figure, and the human's eyes are inside the dog. And you see that the male figure has a cross, go across on his neck, you see the cross on the dog. Both having faith, both having a nature that is driven by their desires and their ambitions. This piece is titled My Father's Heart is in My Chest. It was done in 2012, and it was after a visit to my father and an understanding that it was important to listen to him as he became older. He was 88 at this time, and to listen to his stories. In many ways, he was saying goodbye, and I thought about how much of my own self was in many ways impacted by him, and a continuation of his, not only his realities and his values, but also in many ways the way I physically appeared had a connection to him. And that's what the meaning of the painting is his heart is also in my chest. Silence. And it was actually the first painting that I did in the studio, beginning in 2011 when I moved into the studio. It was completed in 2012. And what I wanted to capture was this importance of silence. And you can see young figures, you can see dramatic figures, but you see a portrait of me in this Buddha-like blue. And it's this idea of coming to an awareness of oneself and one would have to be quiet and reflective, and the studio provides that so that one can hear and think clearly. So the silence is very important so that one can have an understanding of the dynamics around them, the phenomena that exist, and how one should respond to that phenomena and reflect upon their work and their actions. Acceptance was created in 2013, and I'd always been intrigued by the albino and how the albino was always an outsider. An artist very much like the albino is an outsider. You function outside of normal society in many ways, looking at society, evaluating society. It's important to be separate in the sense that it allows you to evolve as a creative person and develop a perspective that allows you to capture, document, and record what is happening in society so that it can be looked at it, so it can be evaluated, so one can learn from it. So this notion of acceptance of one's role as outsider and the aloneness that comes with being an author of a work of art or a work of literature, and to accept that reality, multiple realities that occur. This painting, titled English Only, was created in 2009 as a part of a body of work that was exhibited in Philadelphia. The title of the exhibition was Witnessing. And what I want to do is capture the dynamic and also the contradictions of the requirement of English only that occurs in the U.S. and how this requirement of English only in many ways displaces the rich heritage and cultural achievements of Spanish-speaking people. I think it's very arrogant for Americans to require this as if it's some kind of barrier to the cultural appreciation of the Spanish-speaking people, especially in Mexico. I think there, of course, is a requirement and a necessity to have bilingual as a policy so that one can function as they come to a new country. But I see it as very much a racist mechanism and a requirement to isolate, and in many ways to create barriers that keep out Spanish-speaking people from becoming socially integrated into American society. And you can see in this painting how she is isolated and kept apart. This work of art is titled Poor Black Prostitute. What I attempted to do was two things in this painting. One, to change my palette and create a tension between the use of cool colors and warm colors, muted cool and warm colors to give a drama and a new kind of light to the figure. She's in the background, urban evening. She is a prostitute, a woman of night. If you look closely, you'll see marks on her body, which suggest that there has been trauma in her life and struggles in her life and wounds in her life. The title is in French, and it's a way in which I've asked the viewer to translate, to look deeper at the meaning of the work and to consider interpreting at a deeper level. But she's black, and this was the first painting in the series that I've tried to change the palette to this cooler sort of turquoise color with white. Again, setting up this plasticity, but also this artificial reflection that sits on top of the flesh. But the challenge in this painting is to think about this idea of how you were seen and how you were interpreted. So here she is, although she is not painted as black, she clearly is black by her features, and the person that is viewing her is quietly in their minds saying, but she's black, as if that is some type of barrier. And of course, in many ways, it has been. And it challenges this sort of internal bias that operates often. Intrusion was executed in 2009. It's acrylic on canvas, and it was a work created for an exhibition in Mexico City titled Bloodlines. And what I try to capture in this is an intrusion into realities of other cultures and other peoples. For example, these red lines are vectors. Vectors are lines shot across maps giving coordinates, and it's an arrogant vector. It's a vector of colonialism, where one group comes into a culture, into an environment, into a country, and imposes on that country its own values and its own expectations and own judgments. And these are intrusions into other realities, and you see these intrusions outside the technology, the woman on the phone, and you see the privacy inside that is disrupted. They are coming. It's an oil on canvas that's created in 2003. And what I've tried to capture in this is a reference to others coming into the American cultural and political and social landscape, especially the Muslims, and the meaning of that, and the difficulties of how those relations have been negotiated in America, especially after 9/11. And of course, they're coming across the sea, they're coming into our world, our reality in America, and the challenges with adjusting to that and understanding that these are people with diverse backgrounds. Not all of them have intended harm toward us. And it's also a way in which we have challenges dealing with any culture that is other than ours. Manifest Ego, and it's out of that same series I did after coming from Japan in 2006. And it's about the arrogance a man has of projecting his ego, projecting his masculinity, projecting his body onto the world, defining the world. And not only that, being intoxicated by this physicality and making the body the temple and the way in which we should express and define our identity to the world is through the body. Of course, the body is just merely a vessel, and it is not the most important way in which you should define your way into the world. But in this contemporary times, we really are negotiating our value through the use of our bodies. This painting is titled Apparitions, and it's all on canvas, as well as some relief printing. And it's indicative of my work of investigating the use of mixed media, both print and painting together. I am a painter, and I've invested a lot of energy and time in painting, but in many cases that's a separate kind of aesthetic investigation. Print is very much a different medium, but I've often tried to combine them or be inspired to create prints that have more of a painterly quality and paintings that incorporate printmaking. This is Apparitions, and it's a response to the magical realism that exists in Mexican art, especially in places like Oaxaca, Mexico, where I've spent some time training and studying, and I want to capture that sort of mystery in life. And you see the small girl with the mask and the wings of the arm. She has no arm, but her wing is an angel's wing rather than a birth deformity. So it's about changing how and rethinking how we look at a handicap. This is the final painting in this exhibition. The remaining works included will be watercolors, graphite on paper, as well as a limited number of prints. I think when you look at these drawings, you can see some developmental issues and developmental concerns I have in creating the images. And drawing is very important to me. In many ways, my painting, printmaking is a different form of drawing. I think drawing is primary to the articulation of one's interior realities and one's images that they like to communicate to the world. The printmaking, again, documents in many different ways graphic quality. It's considered in many ways a skeleton of images. The printmaking medium is direct, the high contrast in ink and paper, and it speaks directly to you about its subject. Printmaking has this kind of quality of communal relationship and communal responsibility, and that you make multiple copies of it to share with that community. And it fits my politics as an artist and politics as an individual in the community, that art should be shared. Art should be about uplifting and illumination of spirit and illumination of consciousness. So I hope you enjoy this exhibition and the range of works included. And I'd like to thank everyone involved with creating the exhibition and bringing this to the public for engagement and shared experience. And that's what art is about sharing the experience and sharing one's awareness.